Hey everybody. So, I woke up this morning with an insight regarding psychological work, spiritual work, and the integration of psychological and spiritual work and imaginal work. So, there's issues with developing a purely psychological perspective, issues dealing with developing a fully spiritual perspective, and these are resolved with developing a psycho-spiritual perspective using imaginal work. So the problem with the psychological perspective is that you're very disempowered while you are working with your internal object. Traditionally, I believe, working with internal objects has been more or less working with voices, working with intuited voices within one's head. So the psychotherapist or psychologist would assist an individual in relating to an internalized father, an internalized mother, or an internal child via facilitating an imaginary conversation that one has with this internal father, mother, or child. Although this is effective, it is not as effective as imaginal work. Now, problem being is that, as I say, this person is disempowered in relation to an internal object, because if they were doing imaginal work, then there would be a whole host of spiritual techniques that would allow them to better relate to their internal father, for example. So, let's say that your internal father has historically been demeaning, and that is the nature of your internal object. Your internal object relation is such that you have a weak or young sense of self in relation to a powerful father. Instead of just relating to a voice here, imagine the father and imagine yourself. You can imagine your adult self as supporting that internal child in its relation to the internal father. Most importantly is that you have the spiritual techniques at your disposal now for relating to your internal father. So, with proper intent, you can generate the spiritual trident of Shiva, and you can do battle with your demeaning internal object father. You can protect yourself with an aura of golden energies. You can use the technique of erasure and erase the destructive and shaming and pitying tendencies of your internal father. So, now you have the purely spiritual approach, which denies the existence of internal objects and instead regards intuited internal voices as the presence of other souls. So again, the problem there is that even to a spiritualist, ego is ego. And ego is, in essence, a shroud. It's a shroud that envelops the true self, or Atman, and is populated by internal objects and archetypes. So as a spiritualist, you're going to be relating to other souls, internal objects, internal objects, as quote unquote the representatives of their true soul. And unfortunately, you're not going to be acknowledging the distortive process that ego as a shroud has on your real relations. So, for example, you can distort the relationship frequently, people do, with supervisors by projecting aspects of your internal object father relation onto the relationship that you have with your supervisor, your actual supervisor. So let's say you have a very nice supervisor, but you had a demeaning father. So if you're looking through the lens of the internal object relation, You're often projecting demeaning attitudes on basically neutral or positive relationships. And this is a source of great suffering in relationships for most individuals. So again, do the imaginal work. Do the imaginal work with the internal father, in which you are empowered with spiritual techniques and tools, in which you are acknowledging, well, this is an internal object. Do both. Both acknowledge them as internal objects and as the parcel representations of their true souls. Develop a non-dual philosophy in relation to intuited voices and intuited presences in your internal and external environments. That's the way to remain clear and clean. Hope you're doing real well. Hope the message finds you well. Bye for now.